First of all, we would have to reinforce OAS. Right now, OAS is not more than what the member countries are or provide in the sense of the power to decide on things. Secretary General of OAS is basically an executive that carries on the agreements that the countries reach in the General Assembly. And General Assemblies tend to be very much of a diplomatic, slow, very careful agreement on the wording of certain aspects, but that tend not to go further in the execution. So I think it's relevant that you have a lean OAS. There has been historically much bureaucracy in OAS, and that has been, I would say, a very justified critic from Canada, the U.S., and the larger countries, in the sense that much of the voluntary funds go to salaries and bureaucracy that not necessarily is responding to the new challenges. OAS has slimmed down, I would say, importantly in the last years, probably because of the financial crisis it's been going through. CEJA doesn't have any funding from OAS, curiously, although we are part of the system. We were created in a political view that we had to be technically and politically independent from OAS, so we do not have any permanent funding from the permanent fund of OAS. We only work based on projects and volunteer funds from different countries, mostly Chile at this point, and the big projects from Canada, the US, sometimes the German international cooperation, and so forth. So I would say there needs to be a re-engineering of OAS to provide the Secretary General's office with more power than it has at this time. Second, I would say there is a need in the specific case of justice to re-establish what used to be a biannual meeting of justice secretaries and attorney generals, which is REMJA, Reunión de Ministros de Justicia de las Américas. Last meeting was in 2015 in Bogota, Colombia. REMJA was the one that came up with the idea of creating our organization, creating CEJA. And they should be the ones in some way putting the agenda of justice issues, at least at the government level, and then working together, interacting with the conferences of judicial branches within the Americas, which exists as well. So there should be a permanent conversation between government and the judicial branch to respect their independence and autonomy, but on the other hand, to collaborate in something which is basic within the administration and between the administration and the judicial branch. So you need more power at this Secretary General's office level. You need a more permanent funding for the institution. Of course, you will have to revise that organization and what the profiles of the people and the lines of work that you need at OAS. You need, of course, as we have in CEJA, a strategic plan, which probably should be a multi-year, 5-year plan for OAS, and then yearly plans that are checked by the corporate governance, which should be the General Assembly, and in a day-to-day basis, the Permanent Council, which is represented by the permanent missions of countries in Washington, D.C. So that I would say is important. And again, OAS should have very clear goals upholding democracy in Latin America, upholding due process of law in Latin America, and also caring about the economic situation in the different countries. I know this is something that OAS is working on currently and all the time, but sometimes it lacks, I would say, technical capacity or funds sufficient to work in this matter. So I think it's what is first, the egg or the hen? Yeah, we will have to work again on does the OAS have to work on the trust that the big countries should have on it? Or should the big countries trust in OAS and work in a reengineering of OAS to make sure that it is a viable and useful forum to make or to agree to make political agreements, and more than that, to go further and actually implement changes that are necessary in the region and collaborate. So in the justice sector, I would say REMJA and revitalizing REMJA, the meeting of justice secretaries and attorney generals and general prosecution, is vital to have a regional uh, policy on justice issues. The problem is when you only work at a country level with specific projects, you lose the general scope and you lose the possibility of translating lessons, mistakes, understanding what's good and bad. That's our job as Ceja. But more and more, we have a problem having funds that enable us to work at a regional level, and we're pushed more and more towards 1 year country level work, which is fine in some senses, but it's bad in the sense that you're not able to communicate, to permeate with knowledge from one country to another, which is in an economic point of view a lot more sensible and reasonable than working in individual countries. So I would say that's a challenge, and no doubt about it. OAS has to move towards a more technical profile, which means that um, filling the positions in OAS should be not only a political decision of the Secretary General, but should be more of a very challenging profile definition, and then contests to fill the positions with the most suited for their work, and help the Secretary General move forward an agenda that at the same time has been agreed upon and supported by all state members.